Volume 1, Chapter 10 of The Female American, or The Adventures of Unca Eliza Winkfield. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 10 finds herself unable to get out of the idol. After despairing of extricating herself, forces open the passage, and perceives the earthquake has destroyed her habitation. In this melancholy situation did I continue for some hours, when I supposed the earthquake was over, for I no longer felt the motion of it. But the thunder still continued, yet with less violence, and the claps were not so frequent. I got up and once more ascended into the image, saw no appearance of the Indians, and supposed that they would not be able to come at all at the time. Whilst I sat here, I perceived the earth to shake again, and I once more descended into the passage, determined at all events to get out of it, and, if possible, once more to gain my cell, for which I shuddered at the thoughts of being buried alive where I was, which I had but too much reason to fear. I even got over the fear of the Indians coming and discovering me, with the hopes that my complexion, and the advantage of speaking their language, which I little feared but I should understand, would recommend me to their favor. And with respect to the storm, I might possibly escape without any hurt, and at the worst, I thought it would be better to die by a blast of lightning, or by the stroke of thunder, than to be buried alive in the earth, and very likely be several days in dying. I should have been glad to have found my lamp, but as I could not, I groped my way as well as I could to the stairs, which led up to the trap door, which, having reached, I endeavored to unbolt. But as the bolts were large and very rusty, they gave me a great deal of trouble and much pain, forced the skin off my hands, and made them very sore and bloody. At last they both gave back, when I pushed the door upwards. But what was my terror at finding it would not give way! I was persuaded that I had unbolted it, and therefore concluded, in my mind, that the earthquake had overturned some of the earth above and covered it over. It is impossible to describe the agony of my mind. I concluded myself lost, that I was entombed alive, and that I should miserably perish with hunger and thirst. Fear added strength, and I again and again made the utmost efforts to raise the door up, but in vain. I did but increase my pain and exhaust my strength, till I was unable to make a further trial. How dreadful my situation! No other prospect before me but that of a certain lingering death. I sat a long time on the stairs in the most melancholy condition. I endeavored to pray, but could not. At last I did, when, a little more composed, I got up to look at that light, which I never expected to enjoy again with an open freedom. I was satisfied, as I crept along, that the earthquake was over. When I was got into the statue, I found that the thunder and lightning still continued. What would I not have given in that moment to have been exposed to its utmost violence? I most ardently wished for the coming of the Indians, who happily might prove the instruments of my deliverance. But this was rather the wish of despair than a probable event. For how should they know where to find the door, supposing them present and disposed to seek it? Tired with sitting here, or rather with my own tormenting thoughts, I once more, I knew not why, descended into the passage. But what comfort was I to find there? As I got to the bottom of the stairs, my foot struck against something, which, upon feeling, I found to be my tinder box, and by it my lamp. A secret joy spread through my heart. This I instantly checked with this reflection: what comfort, said I to myself, can light afford to such a wretch as I am, doomed to perish in this place? I now upbraided myself with my own folly. Why did I undertake this rash, hazardous enterprise? Could the poor hermit content himself 40 years in his lonely cell, and was I so soon weary of it? All the favors of Providence are now lost upon me. I might have lived with some degree of comfort, but now must perish miserably. I have by my rashness sinned against the mercy of heaven, and now must die without it. Thus did I indulge the severest reflections on my own conduct. At last I thought I would once more look at my prison door, but with no hopes of escape. For this purpose I struck fire and lighted my lamp, and having reached the door, I carefully examined the bolts, which I thought I discovered to be not quite drawn back. This gave me a little hope. I tried one of them with much pain, for my hands were very sore, and at last it gave back a little. Now my hopes were quite revived, and gave me fresh strength to attempt the other, and was again successful, and so happy as to raise the door up. Thus had my mistake procured all this uneasiness to me, and how many of our miseries do often flow from our mistakes. I now once more beheld the open air in freedom, if such can be said of one who was confined in a small island bounded by the sea. I thanked God for my deliverance, and as the day was declining, I intended to make haste to my cell, but found fresh ruins to interrupt my way. Those remains of the palace which I left standing the day before were now thrown down. Not one had escaped the violence of the earthquake, not even excepting the cell I inhabited. I had reason, indeed, to be very thankful for my confinement in the subterraneous passage, to which, in all probability, I owed my not having perished in my cell. But one misfortune I still sustained, the want of an apartment above ground. The thoughts of living underground were very disagreeable, but no better habitation remained for me. It was well for me that I had the precaution to remove my few effects out of my cell, which by the fall of it might have been destroyed, but which I found safe where I had deposited them. I took some provisions and some more lamps and fat, in order to render my dark abode as light as I could, and with a heavy heart returned back to the place I had left but a little while before, not thinking I should ever have made it the voluntary place of my residence, if indeed I may say voluntary, for it was a necessity, not a free choice, that led me thither. Having entered by the door and fastened it, I lighted 5 other lamps. With that I carried in my hand, ready lighted, but these were not sufficient to take off the gloominess of the place. I had no better lodging than the bare ground, for it was too late to furnish myself with leaves. A melancholy situation, this, and scarcely was I able to bear it, but I summoned everything that could give me comfort, or inspire me with fortitude. Among other things, I considered that it was in every respect better than being on the ground above, exposed to the air and other accidents, that here, at least, was a safe retreat, that my distress was neither owing to my own sin or folly, and that, above all, no place is excluded from the presence of God, that his providential eye was still watching over me, and that I was under his protection. Having taken another refreshment, which I greatly needed, and said my prayers, I laid me down in one of the apartments here already mentioned, with all my lamps burning, and, being tolerably composed in my mind, and very weary and heavy, having had no rest the night before, I fell fast asleep. End of chapter 10.